Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about the Doctor Who episode, Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. Now, I've seen a lot of people raving about this episode online, and at the end of the day, I really just can't join them. This isn't a bad episode, it's just an episode that doesn't really work for me. So, let's just kind of get right into it. Now, one thing that I do like, and I think is pretty interesting, is that we start off with the Doctor teaching Clara to fly the TARDIS. Now, I think the Doctor's only ever taught like maybe three companions, even anything at all about flying the TARDIS. So this does show that the Doctor at least has some serious level of trust in Clara, or at the very least he's trying to make her more self-sufficient should he not be around to help her out or whatever. But anyway, the fact that he's doing this does speak a lot to their reaction. Now, I'm not going to complain about, the ridiculous absurdity of them being hit with the one thing that could screw up the TARDIS at this one precise moment when they'd be vulnerable, because, ridiculous coincidences like that are pretty par for the course in shows like this. It's just sort of the thing that you always expect to happen. At least it's not there always being kryptonite everywhere on an episode on Smallville. But anyway, so they get attacked by accidentally attacked, I guess I should say, by what looks like a ship that looks oddly like one of the ones from Dead Space, and it's got the salvager guys on them. Okay, so this is not exactly the best characterization episode either. So let me just get what I have to say about the salvager guys out of the way first. Okay, first of all, wait a minute. I mean, the fact that this guy, convinces his brother that he's an android just so that he can be captain of what's essentially a garbage scow. And I mean, granted, it's shown that he's the brother that did that. I didn't really bother to pay too much attention to these guys' names beyond the android dude being called Tricky. Sorry, I'm trying to. So, okay, it's shown that he's, obviously a kind of a greedy guy, probably a little petty, but seriously, I mean, when the whole truth of this comes out, I think that there should have been a little bit more time to deal with the fallout of this. I mean, you convinced your brother that he wasn't even human, and then when he finds out the truth, you try and pass it off as a joke. And supposedly the guy's redeeming quality in all of this is that he's willing to do his brother to convince himself, he's willing to convince his brother that he's basically a glorified toaster, but he isn't willing to cut his brother's arm off and watch him bleed to death. Speaking of which, that guy didn't bleed very much from somebody who was supposedly impaled. So, yeah. And of course, then there's the thing at the end where the Doctor hits the big cosmic reset button, and for no discernible reason, the older brother is suddenly nicer to Tricky. I mean, seriously, this makes absolutely no sense at all. And, yeah. I gotta say, I really didn't think too much of the Salvagers as characters. I mean, they did have potential, I will give them that, but there just really wasn't enough to chew on. And then the two brothers getting turned into the conjoined monster, I mean, maybe there was supposed to be some sort of symbolism there in terms of their brotherly relationship. But honestly, this whole thing with the monsters was just dumb, really. It was there because they needed to have some monsters to chase the Doctor and the companions around the TARDIS. As if a damaged and, just almost destroyed TARDIS that was falling apart and about to be destroyed at any time, just in case there wasn't enough drama in that, that they could have worked with. Honestly, the really strong, only majorly positive thing that I can really say about the Salvager guys as characters is that at the end of it all, they're still alive, and which really puts them way ahead of countless other black characters in science fiction stories. So, yeah, that's really all I have to say about those guys. Now, another point of in this episode's favor is that again there were some nice nods to the previous history of Doctor Who. We got to hear the cloister bell again. We got to see them, the Doctor's crib again. That was really pretty cool. Um, we also see them apparently that there's a swimming pool in the TARDIS, and I believe this is what is referred to as the TARDIS's bathroom. Bathroom as in a place where you would bathe, not the actual, where the toilet is on the TARDIS. And if I remember correctly, I think we actually got to see that room one time during the Fifth Doctor's run. I think like Tegan and Nyssa were hanging out there one time because, you've got two attractive females on the show, so of course you have to show them hanging out by the pool in bathing suits. Boy, if I'm turns out that didn't happen, then yeah, that's really going to say something possibly unfortunate about my character. But anyway, let me see here. Oh yeah, of course we get to see the Eye of Harmony, in its all full glory, which was really pretty cool. It's been the Eye of Harmony has certainly been referenced before, but here's a real money shot worth look at the thing. Now, why exactly the Eye of Harmony can turn humans into freaky little burned monsters is not terribly clear, but this is Doctor Who, and just about anything strange in science fiction can somehow turn you into a horrible monster. I mean, just go and look at episodes like, say, Inferno, or The Ark in Space, or, countless examples of that in Doctor Who. And let's see. In terms of characterization, Clara, I'm still not really feeling a whole lot going on there. I did like that bit where, I'm more scared of you right now, very harkening back to how the Doctor has a sliver of ice in his heart from the previous episode. And we do get to see that aspect of the Doctor at the very beginning of this episode when he's threatening the salvagers. And I certainly did like that moment where he says that Clara is, the salvage of a lifetime. That was a very nice moment. That spoke very well of the Doctor's character, his relationship with Clara. So that was certainly very well done. Oh, sorry, I almost forgot in terms of nods to previous Doctor Who's. I got a really big kick, as I'm sure many people did, out of hearing the little voices and bits of previous companions and Doctors. I just really wish I could have made them out more clearly. The only one that I could really hear well was Christopher Eccleston. So I was like, man, and I'm sure these are previous Doctors, but I can't quite tell who it is. I don't know, maybe it's just because I've had a cold lately and my ears are a bit stuffed up. But anyway, so my main thing is that just a lot of this episode seems really tedious. We get basically really when the monsters are introduced, and everybody just has to spend a good chunk of the episode running around for no really discernible reason. This feels like something that was basically could have been told in half an hour, but they needed to throw some monsters in there so that it would amp up to a full-on hour show. And whenever Doctor Who, or really any other show, has to pad things out like that, ultimately the episode seriously suffers. Let me see here. I think I've already talked about how, what the Doctor did in terms of altering time and how it really doesn't quite make sense. But again, time travel making sense doesn't really fly very far on Doctor Who. Now let's get into my last real major criticism of this episode, and this is the whole thing with the big book of the Time War. Okay, the Doctor is, when he finds out that Clara has read this thing and seen his real name, is obviously really upset and freaked out about all this. Okay, if reading this book is such a big deal for anybody but the Doctor, why is it sitting out there in the open with no security around it, and the words "the book, the history of the Time War" or whatever written on the cover? This is basically an enormous, "Hey, come over here and poke around in this book" sign. And you can't even justify it by the Doctor thinking, well, it's inside the TARDIS, it's safe. Well, no, the TARDIS has been invaded by bad guys many times before. I mean, the TARDIS has been hit by the freaking Titanic. It's not invulnerable. So, really, why in the world did the Doctor do this? And if you really wanted to hide it, why put like the big book of the history of the Time War on it? If you don't want people to look at it, stick it on a dusty shelf and put a dust jacket on it that says like Gallifreyan tax code or something like that. And if reading the Doctor's name and knowing it is such an enormous deal, why is it even in the book in the first place? I mean, granted, the Doctor was one of the biggest players in the entire Time War. It would make sense that he would be chronicled in it. But again, who wrote this book? I mean, was it the Doctor? And if so, if his name is being in there and being learned by anybody is such a big deal, Doctor, there's a thing called a black pen. If you don't want someone to read something on paper, one of these babies is really good at covering it up. And okay, this also kind of hits the problem of the Doctor went through all this trouble to really erase himself from pretty much all the records. And of course, one thing that never really made sense about that, I mean, even the Daleks forgot who he was, is, okay, what does the Doctor do about things that are written down on paper or on stone or things like that? Obviously, what he did wouldn't work, so this is a perfect example of that. Of course, as we've seen in recent Doctor Who episodes, the Doctor seems to not really care about people, doesn't seem to care anymore about anonymity or people knowing his name. So, I mean, knowing his name as the Doctor. Obviously, he cares about people knowing his real name for some reason. And man, I gotta say, folks, I have faith in the people who make this show, but I really want to know just why in the world knowing the Doctor's real name is such an enormous deal. So yeah, folks. Despite a genuinely good effort, this episode just did not work for me. But it still did add some elements to the mythos. We got some nice nods to the old show, and I have the feeling that that book, and of course, is probably going to become pretty important later on this season. So with that, folks, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.